Hello, we are here at the TAC conference in Munich, Germany. I sit here together with Uwe. Uwe, you are a member of iSAQB and keynote speaker here. And maybe you can introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Uwe Friedrichsen, and I'm working as software architect for, I think, more than 25 years meanwhile, and I've seen a lot of things. Some were quite nice, some weren't that nice, but well, that's part of the job. And several years ago, some colleague approached me if I would like to join iSAQB, and I'm meanwhile for 8 years or something like that part of iSAQB. In the past years, I also led that working group that created and maintained the advanced level certification for iSAQB in the last years, so last 2 or 3 years. I didn't do that much, to be honest, because, work's in the way.
Your keynote has the title Essential Architectural Work. What's the message of your keynote?
Yeah, actually it's going back a little bit to the foundations of architectural work. So it's 3 questions that I'm going to address. The first one is, why are we doing architectural work in the first place? I mean, about 50 years ago, it somehow started that people said, we need to do some architectural work, and then unfortunately along the way they forgot to keep asking, why are we doing that? So it's a little bit forgotten. So there's a lot of advice how to do that, and a lot of opinions, and do this, don't do that, but without why and without asking why, it's very hard to focus your work to make the right thing. I'm looking for that why it's the first thing. So a quite simple explanation then tomorrow, and so it has a lot to do with quality attributes and so on, would be a lot of detail here. And then the second thing is then, okay, if we know the why, what do we need to do to get there? And what I see quite often is that people only think about, let's design that solution, but there's a lot of more things that needs to be done, like understanding the problem, then figure out potential solution, not only one, but maybe alternatives, and then try to evaluate which is the right one in the given context, and then help all your stakeholder parties that are involved to make the right decisions, which is, of course, development team, but not only them, but also the ops team, the budgets, so the sponsors of the project, and all the other parties, and which is quite a lot of things. And I will also discuss that little bit more holistic point of view that is also sometimes lost these days. And the last thing is then how much, because especially in the last 20 years with the agile transformation, somehow people came to that strange conclusion. So the extremists, the fundamentalists said, let's not do that at all. It somehow emerges magically by just doing some practices, and some other people then say, no, that's completely wrong, and so on. I say, there's a range in there. So depending on your context, you have several degrees of uncertainty in what you're trying to do, and based on that, you have to align also your architectural work, how much you do up front, what you're doing along the way, how you act with evolution and so on. And that's basically what I'm going to talk about. Okay, was long enough, I think.
Okay. And Uwe, can you get some tips or some advice for software architects to maintain and develop a flexible mindset for?
Yeah, there are several aspects, especially those architects who develop from a pure developer background. I always say, be curious, leave your comfort zone once in a while, try to go for requirements engineering, try to go for support, try to figure out what's going on in operations, how does quality assurance work, I mean, besides the automation part, which is critical in today's projects, of course, but also there's some more thinking involved in how do you do quality assurance and how do managers think, how does marketing think, how do the business department think, and so on. And so try to wander around and be curious about all those things. And then, of course, the second thing which is important besides this holistic point of view is don't fall for fashions or hypes. There is no one size fits all. So I'm quite often surprised these days when architects know that their solution consists of, let's say, microservices, single page application front end, of course Docker and Kubernetes, and there must be no SQL database. Before the first requirement is known, say, well, now you just fell for a hype. And so be open in terms of how you design your solution and flexible, and be open in the way you're approaching your goals. So there's also not one way of doing architectural works. It depends on the context, it depends on your teams, on your peers, on everything, and try to have it in mind. There is no right way, there is a right way for the given context. Try to figure out what your context is and then try to do the best.
Back to iSAQB. Based on your opinion, how can iSAQB training and education help software architects on their journey?
Well, there's a lot of, first of all, I said, try to understand things, be outside your comfort zone, especially when you're coming from a software development background, which I see very often in today's software architecture development. So when people, they start in software development, they start coding, and then sometimes unfortunately based on career models, but also sometimes on evolution models, say, yeah, I want to do software architecture. And they have to learn a lot of things, different things, and it's a different skill set, it's different things that you have to deal with. And iSAQB helps you a lot to understand these different points of view. There are a lot of modules. So it starts with the basics and saying, okay, here, that's what our software architecture is about. For instance, I mentioned the quality attributes. I still see a lot of developers who have never heard about this idea, and they have unfortunately very limited view regarding quality and what it means. So for instance, for them it's often maintainability, changeability of code, which is an important aspect, of course, but it's one of about 60 attributes which are around, and then the surrounding context of the company and of the project in the company, all these things that influence what quality means. And the iSAQB gives you a lot of good basic education to understand these relationships, these things, and then also to specialize in different ways if you move on to the advanced level and say, yeah, how am I going to assess what is a good solution, what is a bad one, what kind of options do I have, how do I explore the requirement space, how do I communicate these things. So they give you a lot of a toolbox, and that's very helpful and valuable offering that, from my point of view, iSAQB gives you on this journey to develop into what I call a real software architect.
Uwe, thanks for this interview. Thank you.
Thank you.